Here's something most people will never admit out loud. The reason you reach for your phone the second you wake up, before you've even sat up in bed, before you've said good morning to anyone, before you've taken a single breath of intentional air, isn't because you're addicted to your phone. It's because you can't stand being alone with yourself. And I don't mean alone like nobody's home. I don't mean alone like your roommate's out running errands or your partner's in the other room. I mean completely, totally, 100% alone. No screen, no music, no podcast playing in the background, no notifications buzzing, no TV on just for noise, just you and your own thoughts. For most people, that's not just uncomfortable, that's almost unbearable. And the worst part? You probably don't even realize it's happening. It's become so automatic, so second nature to fill every gap of silence with something, anything, that you've lost the ability to just be. Without input, without stimulation, without someone or something on the other end pulling your attention. So today, we're going to fix that. I'm going to show you exactly what's happening inside your brain when you're alone, and why it feels like a threat. I'm going to show you why most people are confusing being alone with being lonely, and why that confusion is costing them their peace. And then I'm going to give you a clear, practical, step-by-step framework to not just tolerate solitude, but to genuinely want it. Because when you learn how to be alone, really alone, without running from yourself, everything changes. Your relationships improve, your self-awareness deepens, your anxiety drops, and you start making decisions from a place of clarity instead of fear. Stay with me. This one matters. Before we get into the how, we need to settle something that almost nobody gets right. There is a massive difference between loneliness and solitude. And once you understand it, I mean really understand it, not just intellectually but in your bones, you'll never look at alone time the same way again. Here it is. Loneliness is a state of mind. Solitude is a state of being. Read that again. Loneliness is happening in your head. It's the running commentary that says, I shouldn't be alone. Something's wrong with me. Why aren't people calling me? Why does nobody want to spend time with me? What am I missing? It's a story your mind is telling you, and like all stories, it can be rewritten. Solitude is just a physical fact. It's simply the observation that right now, in this moment, nobody else is in the room. That's it. No judgment attached, no meaning layered on top, just you're here and nobody else is. The person who's at peace when they're alone and the person who's spiraling when they're alone aren't in different situations. They're in the exact same situation. The only difference is the story they're telling themselves about it. Loneliness says, I'm missing something. I'm incomplete. I need someone else to make me feel okay. Solitude says, I have everything I need right here. Anything that comes after this is a bonus. And I know what some of you are thinking right now. You're thinking, Rob, I genuinely don't feel okay within myself. I can't just decide to feel whole. It doesn't work like that. And you're right. You can't just flip a switch. But here's what I need you to understand. Getting to a place of genuine solitude where you're truly comfortable with yourself, where silence feels like a friend instead of an enemy, that's the work. That's the actual work of personal growth. Not the journaling aesthetic, not the morning routine. The real, uncomfortable, necessary work of learning to sit with yourself without flinching. Most people never do it, because every time it starts to get uncomfortable, they grab their phone, they turn on a show, they find someone to text. They run. And the tragedy is that the very thing they're running from, their own inner world, is the only place where real healing actually happens. So let's talk about why this is so hard. Because it's not just a bad habit. There's real psychology behind it. In 2014, researchers at the University of Virginia published a study in the Journal of Experimental Psychology that absolutely blew my mind when I first read it. They asked people to do something very simple. Sit alone in a room with their thoughts for 15 minutes. No phone, no book. Just sit. And they also gave people an alternative option. If sitting quietly was too uncomfortable, they could instead give themselves a mild but genuinely painful electric shock. Most people chose the shock. Let me say that again. They chose physical pain over 15 minutes of mental quiet. That's not a quirk. That's not a few outliers messing with the data. That's the majority. And it tells you something profound about the relationship most people have with their own minds. We are running from ourselves, constantly, furiously, and we've gotten so good at running that we don't even notice we're doing it anymore. But what are we actually running from? What's so scary that we'd rather electrocute ourselves than face it? Here's what I've found, both from research and from the thousands of conversations I've had with people about this. When you finally stop running, when you finally let it get quiet, 5 things tend to surface. The first thing is unprocessed emotion, grief you've been avoiding, anger you've been swallowing down because you don't know what to do with it, guilt that you've been carrying for years, resentment that's been building quietly underneath everything. These emotions don't disappear just because you don't look at them. They sit there, under the surface, and they shape everything. Your mood, your decisions, your relationships, without you even realizing it. The second thing is deep-seated fear. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of not being good enough, fear of running out of money, fear of what other people think of you, fear of being truly known and found wanting. These are the fears that keep you playing small, and they only have power when they're unexamined. The moment you bring them into the light, they start to lose their grip. The third thing is unmet desire. When it gets quiet, you start to hear the part of you that knows the truth, the part that knows you're not on the right path, that you're not doing what you actually want to do with your life, that you feel unfulfilled or stuck or like you're just going through the motions. That voice is usually drowned out by the noise of daily life, and that's not an accident. The fourth thing is negative self-talk and limiting beliefs. The moment the external noise stops, the internal noise starts. You're not smart enough. You're too far behind. You've already wasted too much time. You're not the kind of person who succeeds at things like this. Most people would genuinely rather watch 4 hours of Netflix than spend 5 minutes listening to that voice. But here's the thing. The only way to change that inner dialogue is to first hear it. You can't rewrite a script you won't read. And the fifth thing, and this one tends to only surface after you've sat with the others for a while, is the big existential questions. Who am I, really? What's my actual purpose here? Am I living a life that means something, or am I just going through the motions? Am I moving towards something, or just away from discomfort? These questions aren't dangerous. They're necessary. But they're uncomfortable in a way that most people will do almost anything to avoid. So they stay busy. They stay distracted. They keep the noise going. And they wonder why they feel empty. Here's what I want you to hold on to, though. All of that stuff that comes up when it gets quiet, that's not a problem. That's not evidence that something is wrong with you. That is the opening. That is your chance to actually heal, actually grow, actually become someone you recognize and respect. The discomfort isn't the enemy. The discomfort is the doorway. So how do you actually do this? How do you go from someone who dreads being alone to someone who genuinely values it? Here are the 5 steps that actually work. Step 1. Reframe what alone time is. This sounds simple, but it's the foundation everything else is built on. You cannot build a healthy relationship with solitude if you're still thinking about it as a punishment or a sign that something's wrong. So here's the reframe I want you to try. Imagine someone handed you a gift, a beautifully wrapped box, and inside that box, time. Unscheduled, uncommitted, obligation-free time. No kids needing something from you, no emails demanding a response, no boss expecting output, no social event you have to show up to. Just space. To breathe, to think, to exist without performing. For most people, that sounds incredible in theory. And then, when it actually shows up, when the kids are at their grandparents' and the calendar is clear and the house is quiet, they panic. They don't know what to do with themselves. They start making plans just to fill the space. The gift arrived, and they gave it back. What if instead you just let yourself have it? What if instead of calling that feeling of quiet boredom, you called it decompression? What if you called it your nervous system finally getting permission to unclench? Because that's literally what's happening physiologically when you slow down. Your cortisol levels drop. Your nervous system shifts from sympathetic to parasympathetic. Your brain starts to process things it hasn't had bandwidth to process. A 2017 study published in Personality and Social Psychology Bulletin found that people who chose to spend time alone, as opposed to people who felt forced into isolation, experienced measurably increased self-awareness and reduced stress. Same solitude, completely different internal experience, because the mindset behind it was different. The moment you stop treating alone time as something that's happening to you and start treating it as something you're choosing, the entire experience shifts. Step 2. Sit with the discomfort instead of running from it. I'm not going to sugarcoat this one. It's going to be uncomfortable at first. That's not a sign you're doing it wrong. That's a sign you're doing it right. Start small. 5 minutes. No phone, no TV, no podcast. Just sit. Close your eyes if that helps. Breathe. And when something comes up, an uncomfortable emotion, a spiraling thought, a wave of restlessness, don't immediately reach for your phone. Just notice it. Get curious about it instead of judgmental. Ask yourself, what is this? Where did this come from? What is it trying to tell me? Because that emotion that surfaces when you get quiet, it's not a threat. It's not a sign of weakness. It's information. It's a part of you that's been waiting for space to exist. And when you give it that space, when you stop fighting it and start listening to it, it almost always loses its intensity. This is the fundamental mechanism behind therapy, behind mindfulness, behind every contemplative practice that's ever helped anyone. You create space for the buried stuff to rise, and in rising, it stops controlling you from the shadows. The goal isn't to fix everything in 5 minutes. The goal is just to stay, to not run, to prove to yourself that you can be with your own experience without having to escape it. That alone is transformative. Step 3. Write to yourself. I want to push back on something. A lot of people hear journaling and immediately think it's not for them. They picture people with leather-bound notebooks and color-coded pages and aesthetic morning routines. And they think, that's not me. Journaling isn't an aesthetic. It's a tool. And what it really is, at its core, is giving your thoughts a place to exist outside your head, where you can actually look at them. Because here's the problem with thoughts that stay inside your head. They go in circles. They build on each other. They get louder and more distorted with every lap. But the moment you write them down, They become fixed. They become something you can examine from the outside. And that shift alone, from experiencing a thought to observing a thought, is one of the most powerful things you can do for your mental health. Here's how I'd suggest starting. Just ask yourself one question. How am I actually doing? Not the version you'd tell a colleague who asks in passing, not the version you'd post on social media. The real version, the one that's honest about what's hard right now, what you're afraid of, what you're hoping for, what you're grieving. And then let yourself answer it. A 2016 study in psychological science found that self-reflection, whether through journaling, meditation, or simply quiet introspective thinking, significantly improves emotional regulation and builds self-compassion over time. Because the more you examine your own inner world with curiosity and openness, the more you start to understand why you are the way you are. And the more you understand yourself, the less harshly you judge yourself. You start to go, oh, of course I felt that way. Of course I responded like that. I've been carrying a lot. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. Step 4. Give your solitude a purpose. Here's the truth. For some of you, pure quiet, no stimulation, no activity, just you and your thoughts, is too far a leap right now. And I'd rather you take one real step than no steps at all. So if sitting in silence feels completely out of reach, here's the bridge. Alone time with purpose. Pick something that genuinely matters to you. A book that's been sitting on your nightstand for 6 months that you actually want to read. Not one you think you should read, but one you actually want to. A creative project that keeps surfacing in your mind. A skill you've been wanting to learn. A walk somewhere without your headphones in. The key distinction here is between consuming and building. Scrolling Instagram, watching YouTube, flipping through TikTok, that's consuming. It's passive. It requires nothing from you and gives very little back. Building is different. Building is when you're doing something that requires your attention, your creativity, your presence. Research published in the Journal of Happiness Studies found that people who spend their alone time in meaningful solo activities, writing, painting, exercising, learning an instrument, building something, report significantly higher levels of life satisfaction and dramatically lower levels of loneliness compared to people who spend the same amount of time passively consuming content. Same amount of time alone, completely different outcome. Because one version of alone time is purposeful and the other is just noise with no one else in the room. Purpose makes solitude feel full instead of empty. And when solitude starts to feel full, you stop dreading it. You start looking forward to it. Step 5. Become your own best company. This is the one that cuts deepest, so I want you to really stay with me here. A lot of people say they're lonely, and when they say that, they mean they wish they had more people around, more friends, more connection, more social invitations, more of a sense of belonging. And sometimes, yes, that's genuinely the case. But a lot of the time, more often than most people want to admit, the loneliness isn't actually about other people. It's about the person they're left with when everyone else goes home. It's about not liking your own company. Think about that for a second, because it might be the most important thing I say in this entire video. You are the one person on this earth you will never, ever escape. Every single day of your life, from the moment you wake up to the moment you fall asleep, you are with yourself. You are in your own head. You are the constant companion in everything you do, everywhere you go, every experience you have. And if you don't like that companion, if you're uncomfortable with them, if you criticize them constantly, if you're ashamed of them, If you'd rather be literally anywhere else than sitting alone with them, that is not a small problem. That is a fundamental breakdown in the most important relationship in your life. And you cannot fix it by filling your calendar. You cannot fix it by staying busy enough that you never have to feel it. You cannot outsource your relationship with yourself to other people. The only way to actually fix it is to do the work of getting to know yourself, sitting with yourself long enough to understand yourself, treating yourself with enough patience and curiosity and compassion that you gradually become someone you actually want to spend time with. This takes time. It's not a weekend project. But every minute you spend actually sitting with yourself instead of running from yourself is a step in that direction. Every time you choose to be with your thoughts instead of drowning them out, you're building something. You're building a home inside yourself. And eventually, that home becomes somewhere you actually want to be. Think about that metaphor for a second. The only true home any of us will ever have is inside ourselves. Everywhere else we live is temporary. The house, the apartment, the city. But wherever we go, we bring ourselves. And if that interior home is chaotic and uncomfortable and dark, no amount of external achievement or social connection is ever going to make you feel at peace. But when you've done the work, when you've cleaned house, when you've sat with the hard stuff and moved through it, when you genuinely enjoy your own company, you carry that peace with you everywhere. And then the relationships you build, the community you seek out, the connection you share with other people, all of that becomes additive, icing on the cake, not a lifeline you're desperately clinging to. That's the difference between a person who needs people and a person who chooses people. And that shift changes everything about how you move through the world. I want to leave you with something. The next time you're alone, really alone, and you feel that familiar pull toward your phone, toward the TV, toward anything that will fill the silence and take you out of your own head for a while, pause. Just for a moment. Take one breath and then another, and sit in it. Not because it's going to feel good right away. It might not. In fact, it probably won't. The first few times you actually let yourself be quiet, really quiet, it's going to feel uncomfortable. Things are going to come up. Your mind is going to race. You might feel restless or anxious or strangely sad. That's okay. That's the process working exactly the way it's supposed to. Because on the other side of that discomfort is something that most people spend their entire lives chasing and never actually find. Real peace. Not the kind you get from a great vacation or a night out with friends. The kind that lives inside you. The kind that doesn't depend on circumstances or other people or everything going right. The kind that comes from knowing yourself deeply enough to trust yourself. From having spent enough time in your own company to genuinely like what you find there. You are worth knowing. Your thoughts are worth listening to. The version of you that is fully at peace in silence, that person is already in there. You haven't lost them. You've just been too loud to hear them. Solitude, when you stop running from it, is one of the most radical acts of self-respect you can practice. It is not a punishment. It is not a sign that you've been left behind. It is an invitation to know yourself, to hear yourself, to come home to yourself. And every time you accept that invitation instead of declining it, you become a little more whole. That's the work, and you're worth doing it. If this hit home, subscribe, because this is the kind of conversation we have here every single week, and I don't want you to miss what's coming next. And if you want to keep going right now, I'll put a video right here that I think is exactly where you need to go next. I'll see you there.